All right, folks. It's definitely New Year's Eve. It's 5 o'clock here in Durham, North Carolina, and we're going to see what's happening on the political land front and see if anybody joins us here on world politics and all along those lines. So, nearly all of Puerto Rico is without power on New Year's Eve as Puerto Rico plunges into darkness as power outage hits more than 1.3 million customers on New Year's Eve. So, definitely a critical failure of Puerto Rico's power grid means that there'll be a dark New Year's Eve in that area. Actually believe one of those years recently. I think it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I actually was on a cruise that actually went by Puerto Rico and everything. And I actually remember hearing some good music during that particular trip and everything like that. And don't know that I would have been enjoying that if I had been going around that time. But it was definitely around New Year's Eve and all in that space. I want to say it was the New Year's Eve before the pandemic in like 2020 or 2021, if memory is serving me correctly. But a massive outage is leaving nearly 90% of Puerto Rico customers without power. And that is definitely something that folks are talking about on the political land front. As definitely, I know that there's still people that are wanting Puerto Rico to become the 51st state, even though the president is coming in, has been talking about some other areas that he might want to have become states as well, including the seizing back control of Panama and Greenland and a number of other places as well. A U.S. strikes Houthi targets in Yemen after America warship was attacked. So that's something else we're seeing in the news as well, as U.S. hits target across Yemen as Israel seeks global coalition to confront the Houthis. So that's something else that is being reported in the news as well. So definitely a lot of folks will be paying attention to that as the U.S. strikes Houthi targets in Yemen in an escalating campaign. And South Korean court issues an arrest warrant for the embattled President Yoon Suk Yeol. So that's something else that people are talking about on the political land front as well. So definitely a lot of folks are paying attention to that world of political item also, and we'll see what folks have to say about that as well. So a lot of things are going on in the world and on world politics and in that way. German's Chancellor Scholz takes a jab at Musk in his New Year's Eve address. So Elon Musk insults German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and Elon Musk wants a weak Europe, says Germany's Vice Chancellor. So definitely that's something going on. Is there's some tit-a-tat going on between those two as well, as German officials denounce Musk's attempt to meddle in their elections. And China Xi Jinping nods to external uncertainties in his New Year's speech. So China Xi cites global uncertainties in speech ahead of the Trump inauguration. So Xi Jinping signals growth is top priority in a speech acknowledging China's strains. So Xi urges China to stay confident and build tech in his New Year's address. And definitely, it looks like there's some of the countries that are already having their New Year's Eve celebrations. Auckland's over there, I believe that's in New Zealand, had their New Year's Eve fireworks. And of course, Australia has already brought in the new year. And by now, I'm thinking that there should be a new year going on in Ukraine. This is my understanding that they're about 7 hours ahead of us, and it is now 5:04 here in this area. So our good friend Ivan may be bringing in the new year right about now in that particular area. And he's one of the regular commentators on the Ukraine, Russia, China show and all along those lines. So definitely that's something that we're seeing as well. And the UN body accuses Israel of destroying Gaza healthcare. So that's something else going on as the WHO director urges Israel to stop attacks on Gaza's medical infrastructure. So the scramble to find the Gaza doctor in the white coat. Israel raids empties northern Gaza last functioning major hospital of all patients and detains its director. And Russia winds down gas supply to Europe via Ukraine as transit deal expires. So Gazprom reduces European gas flow ahead of the transit deal expiration. So Europe's Russia gas era comes to an end as Ukraine transit stops. So definitely looks like Ukraine to end transit of Russian gas into Europe. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And of course, that will have some political ramifications also. So we'll see what goes on in that space and how that all plays out in a number of ways and all along those lines. So definitely the Aberdeen Airlines crash probe looks into the Russian air control conduct, according to some sources, and all in that space. So a plane flight records of a Kazakhstan crash headed to Brazil and everything like that. So definitely a lot's going on in that space. The U.S. has repatriated the Tunisian detainee held without charge at Guantanamo Bay since the day it opened. So the U.S. released the fourth prisoner this month from Guantanamo Bay, leaving 26 at the American facility in Cuba. So that's something else that is being reported in the news as well. So a lot of things are going on in that space. And of course, there's still conflict in the Middle East as well. So definitely that is something that people are talking about in the political landscape. And the Taliban has bans windows to stop women from being seen at home. So the Taliban leader are banning windows overlooked places usually used by women. So definitely that is something that's going on. And in Lemon, they're saying that there's a relentless war against women in Afghanistan, even though some people may disagree with that if they are in that country and might even like some of those rules and all along those lines. But it'll be interesting to see if folks have notices of this idea because the Taliban has banned windows to stop women from being seen at home, according to one report that's coming out of the Independent and all along those lines. And Finland seizes a tanker, getting tough on hybrid war. So tensions with Russia rise amid a power line sabotage as the owners seek the release of the oil tanker seized in the Finland cable probe. So definitely that's something going on. And one of the political stories that was talked about a lot on last year was the notion of COVID and all in that space. So definitely that's something that a lot of folks have been talking about as well. And as COVID leak suspicion lingers, WHO is urging China to share the virus origin data. So WHO implores China to finally share COVID origins data 5 years on. So WHO is still waiting on COVID's origin data from China and all in that space. And hundreds of soldiers were freed in the latest prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. So that took place recently as well. We talk about gang violence in a lot of places, and apparently Trinidad and Tobago have to deal with that as well. So Trinidad and Tobago declare a state of emergency over rising crime. So Trinidad and Tobago enacted a state of emergency in the face of gang violence and all along those lines and all in that space. I see that I had Toby with me there for a minute, but he's already exited the building and all in that space. So we'll see if he comes back and if anybody else joins us as well. So politicians are among the protesters arrested in Kenya while calling for an end to an alleged abduction. So Kenyan police fired tear gas at protests against alleged government abductions. So Kenyans protest in Nairobi for an end to abductions targeting government critics and everything like that. So Kenyan lawmakers were among dozens arrested during the anti-abduction protests. So like I said, a lot of things are going on around the world, even on the political front and all in that way. And as I reported on yesterday, a truck carrying a wedding party plunged into a river after missing a bridge, killing at least 21 over there in Ethiopia and all along those lines. I've got Sasha Starr with me. I had Toby earlier, so I'm going to bring him in to see what kind of New Year's things he's doing on his day. I was actually just mentioning Ivan a minute ago because, as you said, it's 7 hours there. So definitely there are a number of things going on. And he's maybe even getting some celebration, even though I know he's in a conflict zone as well, because if it's 7 hours, it is now the new year of 2025 where he is and everything like that. So how are you doing, Sasha? Like I said, Toby was here earlier. We'll see if anybody else joins us, but I was just giving some folks some rundown of political things going on around the world. And I did see this article about the most significant things happening in 2024, and I'm going to run some of those down. But first, I want to see how you're doing and what you've got going on in your life, because you might be interested in some of the lists that they're saying are the important things that happened in 2024.
What's the most important thing in 2024? And I would say for the last 3 years since Putin started his invasion of Ukraine. Putin several years ago, I think around 2014, when he annexed Crimea and part of the west eastern Ukraine, Donbass, he realized very interesting thing that the the Potsdam-based international system is no longer working. And he figured out that as the economy is concerned, so Russia is really a midget, is nothing. However, by forging the union with other dictators like North Korea, the Iran, the China, and so on, he's becoming quite a formidable player. And he figured out that with a threat of war, I forget about nuclear, not even that, just a real, normal, good war scares West to the absolutely incredibly I cannot even describe how people in the West, doesn't matter, US, Europe, how they are scared of war, conventional war, not the thermonuclear war, no, the conventional wars. They're scared to death. So Putin figured out if he put on the table his coalition with countries that I just listed, North Korea, China, Iran, and it's a credible coalition. There is nothing that you can call his bluff. That China is no longer with you, North Korea is already in the ocean, and Iran has been decimated by Israel or the United States or anybody else. No, it's not the case. Everything is right there on the table. And there is a threat of war. So what the West can do about that? And even great Donald Trump, what he can do about it. Let's see, Putin will tell him, you go to hell. We can fight for the next 37 and a half years. You're not going to be even alive by the time that we will end this war. So what Donald Trump is going to say? Anybody knows?
I have no idea. What do you think, Joey? What's he going to say and everything like that? Because I was going to bring up that apparently last year or this year that we're coming out of was not a good year for incumbent political parties and everything. Because there was an article that said that the incumbents might be worried in 2025 because apparently the long dominant parties in India, Japan, South Africa, and elsewhere all went into their elections hoping to on strengthen their hold on their power, but instead they lost seats and found themselves in coalition government. So then, even in the United States and the United Kingdom, voters sent the incumbent parties packing. So French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to call a snap parliamentary election after the rightist parties did well in the European parliamentary election backfired and could cost him his presidency. And even Germany's ruling coalition has crumbled and everything. So our incumbents just needing to give up on this whole notion in 2025 because they're saying that some 80 countries representing 4 billion people held either national, state, or local elections last year and everything. And I'm sure there's some more coming up in 2025. So it doesn't look like it was a good year for the incumbents.
I mean, yeah, the incumbents lost a lot, and they were up against a whirlwind of coming out of COVID. You had immigration that had spiked everywhere because of coming out of COVID, and then you also had inflation, which because of the multiple reasons what caused inflation. People want to say, oh, well, it's this policy that did it. No, it's more than just a policy. You have a lot of things that go wrong to cause inflation to spike, but don't want the context of things. They just want to look at their bill and say, oh, well, it's a lot cheaper now. But that's not going to happen if we take just the U.S., for example, that's not going to happen up under the U.S. Things are going to still spike because of the ignorance that we voted for. We voted exactly for an individual who has no plan of anything, who is transactional with everything. So everything is for sale. So we're going to have a spike in the U.S. definitely around prices, and there are going to be a few other places across the globe that are going to have issues. But again, eh, it's going to be an interesting next few years because this is the first election, truthfully, coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
Next year or the next election, we'll see what happens.
And along the same lines, Sasha, I was wondering your thoughts about that because even the Pew Research Center did a poll of some 34 countries that roughly 2 out of 3 voters were unhappy about the state of their country's economy. So it's not just here in the United States, it's in England, it's probably all over the world that people are not happy with the way that their economy is being run. And I imagine that, like Jacoby said, a lot of that has to do with the way that things were done during the COVID pandemic and everything like that. So now that we've been coming out of COVID for a while, is this going to impact the way that who wins in the world politics scene and everything, in your opinion? Because it does seem like a lot of folks around the world are not happy with their individual economies. I don't know how it is in Canada.
Mark, I think you're dismissing what I've just said before. It's
No,
not economy. Okay, so the gas will go up 5 cents a gallon, or okay, the cheese will cost instead of $9.25, $9.45. That's not what is shaping the new world order. Since Russia and its coalition, very skillfully brought up by Putin, is unopposed, then forget about your gas and your cheese or anything like this. It will be a different new world. And China is no longer is scared of Trump's tariffs or anything like that. In fact, China will start dictate to the United States what it wants from it because it has backing of Russia, and there is a North Korea and other kakamania like Iran and so on. It's going to be a different world, and nobody is prepared to that. Not Europe, not United States. This is what important, and people just dismiss it simply because they are incapable to understand what's going on. It's not Ukraine. The war started with ultimatum from Putin to NATO, not to Ukraine. They said you have to get back to 1997 borders, and if not, we will start war against Ukraine, and then we'll go all the way to Europe, whether it's Germany or Poland or France or UK, doesn't matter. Nobody will stop you. And Ukrainian heroic people resisting such a strong and powerful country like Russia now for almost 3 years.
It's interesting you say that because that
Well,
was actually the
I was
number
going to
two
say real
event
quick
that was
though.
out there in the list of significant world events, and this list came out from a organization called the Council of Foreign Relations and everything like that. But the number 2 thing was literally what you just said, Sasha. Because the number 2 thing they said was and number 3 was the rise of evil in the Middle East. But the number 2 was the rise of the axis of autocracies and everything. So they're saying that the return of geopolitical competition is evidenced in the growing cooperation, like you just said, between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And their collaboration has been called the axis of
No, it's not true. No, it's not true. And you know why? Because neither Russia or China or North Korea or Iran are scared of war, conventional war, not thermonuclear, conventional war. They don't care. They will go and fight anybody. Conventional war again. Neither West or
Well,
US are prepared to do the same. They are scared to death.
I don't
That's
think. I think you're right on one thing, Sasha. I think that the people aren't aware of the new world order, and that is where we agree. However, we disagree on what that order is because doing the statistics and everything else, there's a youth movement. People don't realize that 40% of in that youth movement gets their information from online. You know what's coming online? AI. Do you know
Uh,
who has a good push on
I told you,
AI?
I told you,
That
I'm not
is,
going to argue with you on
well,
AI.
well, hold on.
This is completely different thing
No,
what
no, no,
you're
no, no,
talking about.
no,
When
Sasha.
you have missiles going on your head, what AI has to do with that? Tell me, please.
That's what I'm trying to explain to you.
Okay.
So one thing that, and this is where the whole New World Order and understanding, and this is where I think, honestly, during this election, what the Democrat Party didn't understand, but the Republican Party has such a great hold on, is that information and how they push that information out. Because what Trump did was he actually did go on a lot of these influencers programs. Well, once again, 40% of the youth get their information from these influencers. That's a huge block. That is a voting block that actually moves that needle. So then, who else understands that information highway? You're talking about traditional warfare, but what dispels a lot of the traditional warfare or a lot of the problems around traditional warfare is that information. If you could propagate and understand, hold on, hold on, I'm trying to explain. Wait.
You have
If
missiles
wait,
going
Sasha,
on your head.
I'm
No,
almost there. I'm almost getting you. I'm almost getting to your point.
you're right.
No, but I'm almost getting to your point. So you're talking about traditional warfare, going out and fighting, and people are scared of that, and so on and so forth. What if I didn't even have to lift a finger to scare anybody? I mean, to scare a whole nation. What if I didn't have to lift a finger, but I could take over a whole nation without lifting a finger? That is where that new world order is. If I could actually control a whole nation through information and telling them what to think and what to vote for, hence the reason what countries currently control the information coming in and out of them. You have which ones you just said? China, you have Russia, you have North Korea. These individuals that you just pointed out that said, hey, we're above the fray and actually aren't afraid of this warfare. Well, you know why? Because they don't know the atrocities and all this other stuff, and they don't have the ability to push back on any of this information because it gets dispelled and pushed away, and they're told you are actually against the government. So they control that information. So if in that new world order, again, if I can tell, if if we're able to tell a whole country, hey, look, we'll fix your problems regardless whatever we do, but we'll fix your problems, and they completely believe us, and we just go in and rob everything from them and destroy the whole country without ever lifting a finger, because you know what? They believe based on the AI information that is put out, because the youth movement is going to vote for and celebrate us. This is why right now in the US, there are more people in that youth movement of the Republican Party or that MAGA wing that are pro-Russia. Remember when Mitt Romney was running, who was the worst threat or the biggest threat to the US? Mitt Romney came out and said Russia. But now we're 8 years later. Donald Trump has pushed a pro-Russia movement. He's put that to the youth movement. And you know who's actually pro-Russia now? Again, that MAGA wing. So again, if I don't ever have to lift a finger, it doesn't matter if I'm better at fighting or not. But if I can control you based on what I say and not even have to expend any energy anywhere, that's where the thing is. And that's where your axis of evil or axis of evil, and that's where your new world order is. It is in that information that is placed out there, and that will be manipulated by AI and whoever can control that right now. And right now, who's backing that? You've got these big companies that want to use AI like Google and so on and so forth. But who's truly investing in that? Look at what China is doing in that AI space. Look at what Russia is actually trying to do in those spaces. So that's why I say it's bigger than we're just scared of just fighting. Dude, there's a lot more to it.
Titor, if you take a close look at the Ukrainian-Russia war, the artificial intelligence has very little to do really with that war. They are using real missiles. They're using real tanks, real warplanes. So the artificial intelligence, yes, it's helpful in some instances. I'm not going to go as far as to deny it as it doesn't exist and we are like hundreds of years before it will be useful. No, it's there. It's useful somewhere. But that's not the point. The point is that Russia is able. Hold on, Jator. Okay, I'm almost done. The point is that Russia, with its allies, is able, willing, and ready to unleash conventional warfare, which could, in case of it's not successful, become a nuclear warfare. But they don't go nuclear because they are successful in traditional warfare. And that's where the West is facing the dilemma. It doesn't matter this the blogosphere, whether you have traditional, Republican, or Democratic. It doesn't really matter. The matter is it is a new world order. Russia wants to dictate the terms of engagement. And how it does it, it cannot really militarily, it cannot defeat the Western armies. But the threat of war itself, doesn't matter who wins. Probably Russia will lose that war at the end of the day, but it will fight for 5, maybe 10 years before it will lose. And in the meantime, so many people have to go through death, through the destruction in the West, and so on, and people cannot handle it. So they say, okay, Putin, fine, take Ukraine, what else do we need? That's what a reality today.
But Sasha, this is where I think you're missing where I'm trying to explain to you. For example, in this Ukraine-Russia war, where's Ukraine getting its supply? Not from within Ukraine. It's getting it from its allies, us like the U.S. and so on and so forth.
Okay,
However, in that information warfare that's getting propagated throughout the GOP, who also votes to either help or not help Ukraine, send missiles to or not missiles to. They're basing that on not only themselves, but also their electorate. So if I could propagate in the actual main ally, in the main allies nation, to a whole group of individuals, make them pro-Russian, make them against Ukraine, don't I take away Ukraine's effort to get ammunition or get munitions to help themselves? Yes. So in that information highway, you're not just looking at, hey, Russia, we got to send that information to the Russians and the people who are pro. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the information highway that gets out to the other individuals, to the allies that want to help Ukraine, to make sure Ukraine stays a country within itself, to stay that Russia does not take it over. But if I can take those people away without lifting a finger and not having to fight, just by telling them, hey, you know what? Ukraine has white supremacists in it, which is a lie. But the thing is, that's what's getting propagated inside the GOP. And you know what? That GOP and that MAGA wing then say, hey, we're not supporting those people. Hey, we're not going to, they're just stealing our money. Hey, they're just doing that. So we're not going to send anything that way. Hey, Trump says that we should be against Ukraine and he's going to be good with Putin. It was just Putin was, he's going to listen to him. So we're going to listen to Putin now. So if you take away the allies from Ukraine just based on information and not even having to shoot a missile towards them, you know what? That destroys Ukraine. And that
no,
is what I'm talking about. I'm
no,
talking about the
no,
pipeline.
that's not right. For 6 months, Ukraine was not getting any American weapons. For 6 months, there was no help of United States to Ukraine. And what's happened? Did Ukraine lose the war? No. They continue it is heroic resistance. You're missing a concept over here. See, you're going on that level to figure out, oh, through information technology, AI, okay, I'll convince without lifting finger. I will convince these people to do this and that people to do that. So you just don't understand reality. Reality is that Putin mastered. He was not aware of it 10 years ago, how scared the West is of the war, conventional war, not thermonuclear, conventional war. He didn't realize at that time, but he realized it now. He realized that the powerful United States, which could provide Ukraine with enough weapons so they would throw Russians away from Ukraine in a matter of 2-3 months. No, West was providing weapons, but only enough for Ukraine to continue resistance, but not to win the war. So Putin, and why West did it? Because West was scared of escalation. That's what Joe Biden said. I'm scared of escalation. So Putin is not scared of escalation. It's a West, United States, Western Europe. That's it.
But Sasha, you're actually proving my point without, I guess, understanding what you're saying is proving my point. You say that the West is scared of war and the West is scared of this. Well, if Putin starts putting out information to the West and scaring the West without even having to, just saying threats is information. It's not lifting a finger. It's anything. It's just propagating. Hey, I'm going to come get you. That's just it. That. If you're saying that that's what's scaring people, that's proving my point. Then on top of that, what's also proving my point, you even hold on. You even admit that Ukraine gets supply from the U.S. If that tap is turned off, it's just a matter of time. It's not. That's just simple math. If you cannot get refills on your munitions and you run out, you have no way to defend yourself in that way. So if you're able to turn off that tap, then yes, it becomes a problem. So again, that also is proving my point, is that if you're able to use information to actually turn off that tap, which is what is being propagated throughout the whole Trump presidency, or the Trump-elect presidency, the whole MAGA wing, that's telling people, hey, we should not support Ukraine, even though we should. So if you're able to convince people that you shouldn't, then we won't. And if we won't, that becomes a problem. That turns off that tap.
There is nothing to convince anybody. What Putin is doing is a very capable thing of not only threatening the West, but implementing it on the example of Ukraine. And Ukraine, by far, is the mightiest army in the Europe. So if he could crush Ukraine, which he didn't, he couldn't do that. But he's trying still after 3 years or almost 3 years. Then he could easily crush Germany, France, Spain, Italy, UK, Czech Republic, Hungary, whatever countries in Europe. Nobody has as capable army as Ukraine. So yet he's providing incredible damages to Ukrainian infrastructure, to electricity supply, and killing many innocent civilians. That's what, so he's demonstrating that, look what I'm doing in Ukraine. Ukraine is so distracted, and I will do same thing to Germany, to France, to any other country. Don't you understand that? So,
Sasha,
nonsense.
No.
Get on your knees, say, Putin, you are great. That's where he's going with that stuff.
Yeah, Sasha, but I think what you're missing is that we're agreeing on the fact that Ukraine is mighty. Ukraine has valiantly been fighting. They've been doing an amazing job. And they should be supported. But what you're missing, no matter how strong whatever army is, if they cannot get utensils and tools to continue the fight has a timeline. Their
Yeah,
fight will end. And that is sad. But again, my point being is if you take away those munitions, that means even the mightiest army that we agree on that has fought valiantly will no longer be able to fight because they won't have the ability to.
Jacobi, there
That
is no
is the point.
argument here. There is no argument. Obviously, Ukrainian army is much more capable fighting with the Western help and weapons than without. Who would argue that?
Yeah, and that's why I'm just saying that this is where the information piece comes into play. The more the information that is propagated throughout the US and accepted in the US that Ukraine is bad, Putin good, that means that the US will begin to no longer support or even accept supporting Ukraine, which becomes a problem.
Jacobi, you are right. So if more people in US would agree with the nonsense that you should not continue to support Ukraine and so on, so US will stop supporting Ukraine. It doesn't mean that Ukraine will lose the war because all European countries and powers, they are providing more and more help, including financial and weapons and so on. So US will be out of it.
So
But
Sasha,
it doesn't defeat what I was trying to say, all the program of Putin mastering the threats against West and making it material.
but see,
West,
Sasha,
yeah, that's all there is to it.
but see, Sasha, we agree that if that situation propagates and goes through the US and pulls the US out, we agree there. So this is where I'm trying to get you to understand this is where the information pipeline becomes a problem and
Okay,
which is huge. And that so if that also if we're able to hold on, Sasha, if we're able to agree that that can propagate and cause the US to pull out, do you think that and you just admit US is not the only person trying to help Ukraine? So Putin also would understand that. So would China, so would Iran, and these other places that are helping him. So therefore, do you assume that these same situations of information or propagating this misinformation only happens in the US? It doesn't. It is going throughout Europe as well. So if Europe then pulls out and the US pulls out, again, that goes back to my point. This is where we continue to fall into the idea that, oh my goodness, these traditional wars, that's what people aren't thinking. No, we have to think future. Future technology is bigger than just, hey, people on the battlefield shooting back and forth. There's more to it. You play chess. You know there's more to just that one move. If I take that pawn that's sitting in the middle right in front of the rook and move him up 2 spots, you know behind that move, there are 50 other moves that I'm thinking about. And that's what I'm talking about with the information pipeline, because
okay.
that pipeline is huge.
Understand. Okay. I got it. Yeah. Okay.
See, do I love you, Sasha? This is our fun talk. We still got to play chess. I love you, man.
Listen, Jacobi, you are trying to entertain here. Okay, you have some I say 20 minutes left, so you will spend 20 minutes explaining the virtues of AI and some other technical stuff, or so on. So people will applaud and say, "Oh, what a great guy! Look, he's so knowledgeable. He knows stuff, and that's amazing." Because what you are saying after what I've presented in the earlier part of the program has very little to do with the real thing, with the real
Just
thing.
agreed.
No, first level, Putin understood that the threat of war doesn't matter you win the war or you lose the war. The threat itself is so powerful that he can get a lot of mileage out of it. Now, forget about Ukraine. Just say what AI has to do with Putin's concept. A lot, a little, nothing.
Do you want me to explain a little bit better? AI, because of the technology around AI and what it can do, deepfake videos, You can actually create full-blown news programs based around AI. You
My
can
question,
actually create.
when Putin started this 10 years ago in 2014, there was very little AI, if anything, available at the time, right? It
No,
was it was just a concept, and
no, it
started.
wasn't. No, it
No,
wasn't. I want to push back on that because that is untrue. AI has actually been
oh,
around for a while.
so how Putin could accomplish all that without, at that time, 10 years ago, without using any AI at all? He didn't need it 10 years. Even today,
Incorrect.
he need it. Or is it?
Incorrect. And
What?
just as you are a student of history, you're
Yeah.
saying just to do something very analogous, because I believe Putin to be a dictatorial monster just as much as you do. I will actually make the relation to Hitler. Hitler didn't just win on the or try to win on the battlefield by attacking people. Do you realize how many pamphlets they put around? So that is
This is
propagating
not AI.
information.
This is propaganda information, but it's not AI. At the time, there was not an AI, or at least
So again,
continue
so
to ask.
again,
There
so
was an
again, Sasha,
AI, you know.
just to point out,
Yeah.
are you saying that Putin didn't use propaganda to not only influence his population but others across the globe?
Okay. Yes, he used propaganda, and it's
So
very useful. But first, you have to have a concept. What is your goal? Where you're going?
again,
Once you
that
figure
is
out that, then you can line up propaganda and the other means
and
to get it where you want to get.
here's
But
another here's
concepts.
another thing for you then, Sasha, in terms of understanding that Putin did use propaganda. So if you play chess, that's your big game. Do you think to understand playing chess, and you're just a noob right now who's just getting into the game, could that noob begin to use, say, some of the chess programs that are out to help themselves learn chess?
Yeah, of course.
So if you find that a program could help you learn chess, and it could probably help you learn chess a lot faster. So
Yeah.
my point being is that if Putin was using propaganda, as we agree, before even AI was even thought of or thought, as you consider, not even out there, and now that it is, and it is able to create its own propaganda and actually push out information faster than we can even think of at this moment. Do you think that he would take advantage of using that to actually spread his message more and actually use bots as he has been using? Because he did have a whole, basically factory in a sense that was pushing out
He
bots.
did it over 10 years ago in first election of Donald Trump. They were using bots or all this stuff. But you know, with this
But
is
you're saying, are you saying those bots disappeared and that he didn't
no,
use it anymore?
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this is very tiny fraction of what Putin is all about. Yes, he's doing that, but this is maybe 0.75% of grandiose plan that he developed 10 years ago or maybe even earlier, and he's implementing it right now. And all propaganda, artificial intelligence, and everything else, he's using whenever it's needed to help him with his plan. What's there so unclear about it?
Hold on a second, Sasha. Just really quickly, I want to make sure that I'm jumping in just for a second. If I'm hearing you correctly, and to correct me if I'm wrong, are you suggesting that America is becoming very much a weakened country and all along those lines? And it sounds to me, because I think I've heard you say this before, that you think that the United States should bring back some semblance of the draft in order to get people to actually join the army. Because I've heard you say before that you think that young people are a little bit weaker than they used to be. So is that
It,
a correct? Is that a correct statement?
it is absolutely necessary. U.S. is falling behind China and even Russia and others in the arms production development, its army. They they have supply. Actually, there would be, let's see, conventional war with China. American supplies will last around 2 weeks. After 2 weeks' time, they will have nothing to fight with. So
That's
they
true.
need production. They need factories. How many war producing factories are there in the United States? Five. 30 years ago, there were 55. So
Here's a question.
get rid of this war producing machinery. So right now they are at the mercy. They cannot, okay, they can bluff like Donald Trump. We are
Okay,
strong. We are going
hold
to
on.
do this and that. But real fighting, try to defeat Afghanistan or Iraq or anybody else. You are incapable of doing that. And if you will
Sasha.
have a foe like China, never mind. Come on,
Okay,
you don't even start the war. Just give up.
just to point out, Russia, China also lost in Afghanistan, lost in the Middle East. The Middle East is a powder keg. It is nothing that you're going to take over. It is something that you actually got to work with and figure out to do something better instead of trying to go in with bombs. Because all these other countries have done that and have lost, not just the U.S. In terms of, and Mark, if you can look this up, if you buy the computer,
Yeah.
you can look up the amount of people that are in the military in comparison to the other countries. You can actually look up the amount of stock that the U.S. has compiled in comparison to other countries. Because if you realize, Sasha, we do still have, I think it's out west somewhere, that there's a whole desert full of tanks that we're still trying to figure out who we're going to ship them to. So we have a backlog of actually equipment. To try and say that we'll run out in 2 weeks, everybody else would run out in a week. It's not really that. Uh, that is the old. The problem is, again, that is the old way of thinking. It is all on the, hey, we've got bullets. We got more bullets than you. That doesn't work anymore in terms of war, information war, and the propaganda that gets out there that actually changes people, especially because 40% of heck, more than 50% of the people in Palestine are under the age of 40. You have, a youth movement across the globe, and that is the issue. And if we're not on that train of understanding of where that information is coming from and going to, and what that information is, we're still going to lose the war no matter how many bullets you have. You can, as you tried to point out earlier, talking about sending 100 people in space flying around, that's not a reality. That's nothing that could ever happen,
Yeah.
especially for the
To answer your
next.
question really quickly, because I just looked it up. As of February of September of 2023, the U.S. military, and I'm sure it's probably gone up, consisted of 2.86 million people worldwide, and the CIA reported the U.S. has the world's third largest active military by size, surpassed only by China and India in 2023. So the two countries that are beating us in terms of the size are China and India.
Yep, two with bigger populations than everybody. So again, Sasha, you're not going to win a war all the time with bullets going back and forth. You're going to win the war more so through information. That's what we've found out historically. So
Well,
we've got to figure that out.
if
And
you
we've got
take
to get on the train and understand how to figure that out.
Okay, if you take all the latest wars that US fought, starting from Vietnam and all the way to Afghanistan, US haven't won any war at all. Not information, not militarily, nothing. There are wars and wars and wars, losing, losing, and losing. What else you can argue about it?
So what you're talking about when we went in with your mindset, exactly. We've got bigger guns, we've got more weapons than those people in Vietnam. So we should be able to wipe them out. No, that wasn't the way you win a war because he didn't understand guerrilla warfare tactics, didn't understand the information warfare tactics. There were just tons of things that we miss out on because we get into the calculation that if I have a bigger gun, I'm going to win. That's not the way to win.
And just really quickly along those same lines, the average age, and I think this is where Sasha was going, with the fact that there was a time that we drafted people and there were younger people in, because the average age in the U.S. military right now is 28.5 years, so which means that mostly it's like people in their late 20s or early 30s that are, and I'm thinking that's because of the generals and other people that are much older. But it sounds like we have the military has gotten older in terms of its average age. I do remember there was a time that the average age was probably closer to like 20 to 19 or 21 or something like that. So it does seem like we have become an older military.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get our youth? Information.
Good luck with that.
We are back to the same thing. To the information.
Fight it. Do information, and one more time, information. That's how we win the wars. That's how we win the people. You defeat enemies. You do everything through information. Go ahead, do it.
I was going to ask you just really quickly before we wind down, because we only got about 10 more minutes, and this has been a lot of discussion between the two of you. But what the other military, and you kind of alluded to it, and it was one of the number 3 issues, because AI was up there on that list as well, and y'all have been talking about AI, was the upheaval in the Middle East. So are we going to see a end to this upheaval? Because it looks like it's escalated. Like we had the war against Hamas, and then Hezbollah came in, and now they're saying that the death toll, and this article is a little bit older, so it's probably up there past this number. But at the time of this article, it had exceeded 45,000, and northern Gaza was on the verge of famine. So are we going to see an end to this war? We know a lot of the leaders of Hamas have been killed and are dead now, but it does seem like the Middle East is a powder keg now. So will there be an end to this war in 2025?
No.
Mark, I think I made once reference of the book by Victor Hansen by the name, forgot, it's the end of everything. I think that's the name of the book. Mm-hmm. And he shows in a few examples in civilization from history where there was a time when a civilization was defeated and disappeared from the map of Earth and never came back. It's happened with for example, Carthage wars. It's happened with Inca civilization or Aztec civilization in Central America. A few others in Europe, including. And it seems to me that this situation in Middle East, it leads to what he described, Victor Hansen, in his book by the name The End of Everything. There are no space for 2 civilizations in that region. There has to be complete defeat of one by another one. Who will defeat? We'll see.
It'd be interesting to see how that goes. Everything we got Steve that is joined us. Steve, any thoughts? We're going to talk about the important issues of 2024.
I thought we were off today, so I'm just it's New Year's Eve, and I wanted to just wish everyone a happy New Year. And my final insights of the year has just been a very turbulent year, a very exciting year, a year that ends with the loss of President Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, and I think gives everyone a chance to reflect on this great leader for our country that, came to the presidency at a very different time in our nation's history. I mean, let's not forget that his first words of his inauguration were thanking his predecessor, Gerald Ford, for healing the nation. And when he lost an election in 1980, he said, 4 years ago, I promised I wouldn't lie to the American people, and I cannot lie today. I'm absolutely crushed by this defeat and loss. But he was honest and then used the ex-presidency as a stepping stone. So I wanted to dedicate the final moments of the show to honor one of the greatest Americans our nation's ever produced, Jimmy Carter. And I think it made us all proud as Americans that he was in the White House. And I want to end on a positive note to honor him. And remember, January 9th will be a day of mourning as he lays in state in Washington for the state funeral. And we'll talk. And the world is changing. Lots of different things going on in the world with incumbents losing, populism, autocracy increasing around the world, and Donald J. Trump only a few weeks away from living back in the White House, which is kind of scary for many of us, but we've accepted it. So anyway, that's my final word of the year. Happy New Year, everybody.
Can I tie 2 things with what Steve said together real quick? Because one of the one of the greatest things that Carter was doing was always trying to rid the world of particular things like diseases and so on and so forth, particular diseases. Well, we also lost someone who was important in the, I guess, broadcasting world to cancer. Because remember, Greg Gumbel died on the 27th. So it'd be, I mean, to tie the two together in a humanitarian way, in the way of a Carter. I mean, in 2025, it'd be great if we could focus on even more so on ridding cancer.
Yeah,
And not just ridding
absolutely.
cancer.
Hey, I've got to run, guys. I'm getting ready for a party. I didn't want to. My
No,
wife
I
was
appreciate
calling
you.
me,
Like I
but
said, we only
sorry
got
about
5
Greg
more
Gumbel
minutes.
passing away. Terrible, and we will pray for the Gumbel family. What a great commentator, and it is, was a great man. So thank you all so much.
Appreciate you. We only got about 5 more minutes to go. And even to what you were saying, Jacoby, one of the other issues that they raised, which has been going on for a while, has been going on even longer than any of the 2 wars that we talked about and everything. But it comes down to that notion of humanitarian aid. There's been a major civil war in Sudan. It's been going on forever and it's continuing to go on. And it will probably go on as well because it began in April of 2023. And that was actually the latest rendition of it because there just had a lot of famine and a lot of other issues, and it has been a war-torn region for a number of years, even though it's the latest conflict started in April of 2023 and looks like it will be going into 2025 as well. So that whole notion of conflict and conflicts around the world, and some of them being dealt because of the economics of the area and everything, and the politics of the area. So definitely there's famine that has played a role in that as well.
Yeah. A lot of that, I mean, that's why I say bullets aren't really what's winning the wars of today. It's the humanitarian, the information. I mean, if you can't, we have to start empathizing with people more. Understand there's more than just things aren't black and white. There's context. Understand the context. Try and feel what somebody else is going through and understand what they're going through and speak from their position and not always just from yours.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we try to do that here on the network, and we'll continue that over the week. But just to run through, and y'all touch on quite a bunch of them, but the 10 that the Council of Foreign Relations had and everything, and that's kind of what I was using as the context for the story was, or this particular edition was, the space race is alive and well, which we've kind of talked about. The world braces for China Shock 2.0 and everything. So definitely China's influence was seen in the war. The Sudanese civil war rages on, which y'all kind of touched on. The development of artificial intelligence continues to astound and concern, which you kind of brought up and everything. Russia takes the offensive in Ukraine, which is number 6, and Sasha kind of talked about that. The incumbent political parties took it on the chin, which you kind of referred to, and which I gave some context to as well. The climate continues to heat up, which we didn't talk about, but definitely that's something that a lot of people were been paying attention to in 2024 and will probably continue in 2025. And I think some Nobel Prize winners were even folks that had done research in that space. The upheaval in the Middle East was the 5th one. The third one, and the second one was the rise of the axis of the autocracies, and the number 1 one, which you kind of alluded to, and which Sasha kind of alluded to, which I think shocked a lot of people around the world, was Donald Trump winning the U.S. presidential election. And I did hear somebody earlier today speculating that it could be even a whole tyranny. Well, not saying tyranny, but a whole kind of like monarchy that develops. And I know they talked about that with Kennedy's on the Democratic side, but this notion that Trump could win this next election, well, he's won this next election, and then J.D. Vance could win the next 2. And then by that time, Byron or some of the other family members might be able to run as well. So maybe we're getting ready to have a Trump versus Kennedy monarchy going on and everything, which is not something I want to see, but hopefully it might be something that people that are on different sides of the politics may be speculating about.
Well, yes, we do have our first oligarch in Elon Musk. Yeah, we do have the rise of an autocracy. But the funny part is that you at the end of the list of names, you said Byron Donalds. You know the GOP. Okay. I was about to say Byron Donalds because you know the GOP ain't putting no black person in for a president.
I mean Byron Trump. I said it wrong. My fault.
I mean, hopefully they prove me wrong, but but yeah,
But on that note, as we get ready to head out the door, it has been good because I've been watching a little bit of the College Bowl series, and LSU is actually playing right now, and there are a number of other games that are going on. I don't know about you, but it has been good to see the rise of many more African American coaches, both on the college level and on the pro level. Because even though I don't want him to leave, because I am a diehard Minnesota Vikings fan, there is speculation that Flores may be getting ready to come back as a coach and everything, who is the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings and everything along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting to see, but it does look like we've seen a rise in black coaches, both in football, basketball, and a number of other places as well.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, the more equality, the better. I mean, the more diversity, the better, because it represents the country and it represents who we are. It'd be nice. I mean, I'm hoping that Becky Hammond ends up being the first female WNBA or the NBA coach, because she's been phenomenal. She's always been phenomenal as a coach. There's some others that are out there, like Dawn Staley. I love me some Dawn Staley. That lady is awesome in every way.
True that. On that note, we'll get ready to get out of world politics. We'll see if folks want to do. I'll set up a link and we'll see if we'll do World Edition. Because, like I said, I have got a very quiet January 1st, except for what's going on with the Kwanzaa celebration, but that's not till the afternoon. So I'll probably wind up doing it. But I'll set up a link and see if folks will show up or don't show up. And then we'll play it by ear. But we'll definitely be back on the 2nd for sure. But I'll see if folks show up on the 1st.
All right. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Get to your New Year's Eve party, wherever that may be.